Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. I wanted to talk today about something that's really, really important, which is emotional abuse. You know, I was in a relationship once when I was young, and actually, it had really many fantastic things about it. We had fun, we'd go out on adventures, and I feel great most of the time. But then he'd often withdraw and give me the silent treatment. And then suddenly the relationship would go cold. And I was left feeling unloved and scared. And then he'd shine his light back on me and I was back in the warmth and I felt great again. So it was hot, cold, hot, cold. And it was so confusing. I remember once even thinking, I wish he'd just hit me. Have you ever thought that? So many women have said that to me. I wish he'd just hit me. And then they feel really bad, like I did, thinking, gosh, my situation is not as bad as somebody who is getting hit by a partner. But emotional abuse is just as insidious and abusive as if they put their fist to you. It strips you of everything. And in a way, emotional abuse, honestly, can sometimes feel harder than physical violence. And I know that might sound strange, but I've experienced both. So I know just how hard it is to experience emotional abuse because it can be just so confusing to the point where you don't even know whether you are being abused. And, I had another woman who has found the courage to leave her husband. And she confessed to me recently that she still feels huge guilt and wonders whether she was in an abusive relationship, and really kept saying, sorry, I don't know why that's on the screen. Anyway, she kept saying to me that she thinks that maybe it was her. And that was really, really confusing. And this is after, honestly, she described to me what I would say ticks off every single thing on the list of the classic narcissist checklist. So even after everything she described to me, I was like, yep, tick, 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 tick. Yep, narcissistic, abusive. She said to me, I really am not sure that he was abusive at all. And I think maybe it was me. Have any of you ever felt like that? Because emotional abuse, it is insidious and it's confusing. And frankly, it's a dangerous form of control. And so many women come to me with doubts as to whether what they're experiencing or have experienced after they've left is abusive or not. And that's why I always say to them, it's like you're a frog in boiling water. They turn up, it's subtle, they turn up the heat and the level of control just incrementally, little bit by little bit by little bit. And to make it more confusing, while they're doing that, they are also doing it in between those times when they are wonderful and great. So you think, did that really happen? Am I imagining it? So you're never really sure. And by the time that you do realize the water is boiling and they've got total control over you, it's too late. They've stripped you of all your self-esteem. And so you have that trauma bond that the very person you need to make you feel good about yourself again is the person who's abusing you. Does that make sense? Honestly, I can't talk enough about this subject because make no mistake, this is brainwashing. It's actually now deemed a crime in the UK because many women who have ended up dead at the hands of their partners first spent years experiencing that insidious form of emotional abuse, which is called coercive control. So I decided today that I would record this video for all of you who are in a relationship that in many ways does seem great, but something is gnawing away at you inside that tells you that something's not quite right. Maybe it's not what you think. So what is coercive control? It's a strategic form of oppression that's used to instill fear. Basically, they want to get you to the point where they have total control over you and you're too scared to leave. And as I said, anyone can experience emotional abuse. You can have the best job in the world, the fanciest house, and to the outside world, you look smart, successful, and strong. No one is above this or immune to it. So I'm going to go through a list of things that will make you realize that you can tick them off as I go along to see whether you are in fact experiencing emotional abuse. The first is that they isolate you from family and friends, from your support network, because they don't want anyone around you that can, when they start to really reveal who they are and you want to run, can support you to leave them. So, for example, they might insist on a shared phone or shared social media account just for convenience. And you might at first think, oh, that's really sweet, isn't it? But it's not. It's that they want to have control on everything that you do. Or they might move you away from your family and friends, insist that you move away, or tell you things like my ex did me. He said, oh, you're too spoiled. You were brought up with a silver spoon in your mouth and you always run to mummy and daddy, that sort of thing. Or your parents or your siblings, your family don't have your best interests at heart. You're just too stupid to see it. You can't see that they hate you. They don't, that sort of talk. I don't know whether you've ever heard that sort of thing. Secondly, they might start to monitor your activity during the day because they want to start to make themselves omnipresent in your life. They might go as far as, say, rigging up cameras around the house, telling you that they want to keep you safe from the outside. But really, it's so that they can monitor you. They might have a two-way system so they can contact you immediately, a walkie-talkie on your iPhone, iWatch. And you might at first think, oh, isn't that sweet? But, it's not. It's them wanting to just keep tabs on you all the time. I've even had women tell me that their ex had insisted, demanded that at random times of the day, they would send them a text saying, send me a photograph of where you are and who you're with. And like totally dominating and controlling what they do during the day and monitoring that, which really that's quite invasive, isn't it? Or the third one is that they'll deny your freedom and restrict your movement. So that could be anything from limiting your access to a car, or it could be refusing or denying you the ability to go to classes and study because they don't want you to improve yourself and get to a point where you might realize that this is going on and leave them, or just stop allowing you to go out on your regular, Thursday night drink with your friends. And again, they might say this with a smile. Oh, I love you so much. I want you all to myself. They can say this stuff with a smile. It doesn't have to sound abusive. That's why you get so confused. Or there's gaslighting, classic gaslighting. That's number 4 of 12 signs I'm going to give you. So that, gaslighting is so insidious because this is where they have to be right at all costs, and you as the victim are forced to acknowledge that they are right. So, for example, if you bring up bad behavior that they've done or times they've disrespected you, for example, they will just tell you you're lying, you're exaggerating, or you're too stupid to remember what they said correctly. You know, that sort of thing. They will just completely deny the truth that you see and convince you that what you know and saw to be true, which was their abusive behavior, was in fact you getting it wrong, exaggerating, lying, being nasty, you know, that sort of stuff. It's just awful. I experienced years of gaslighting, and you can be gaslit by anybody. You know, all of these traits, these can be from a relative. It could be a boss at work. It doesn't have to be an intimate partner, you know. The fifth one is name calling and put downs. You know, again, they might even do this with a laugh, a smile on their face, jokingly calling you a derogatory name, but then laughing about it. And then they could gaslight you when you say, get upset about it and say, oh, you're too sensitive. I wasn't saying it like that. I was only joking. You know, you can have a combination of name calling and gaslighting. And put downs, just subtle put downs. Oh, you never dress nicely enough for me. You always dress like nicely for everybody else at work, but not for me. You know, this sort of thing. And it's bullying. It's bullying. Simple as that. The sixth thing is financial abuse. They could just limit your access to money. You might not be working and they give you a budget that barely covers expenses so that there's never enough for you to just save enough to leave them. It's all designed to control you and stop you leaving them, is basically what it all comes down with. So you might not be allowed to have a credit card. You might not have access to bank accounts. They'll hide resources and money away from you so you can't see it. And worse, they'll monitor all your expenses. So I know one of my friends, gosh, she used to be given this money. She worked and he didn't, and she supported him. Yet she was only allowed a tiny amount of money each week that barely covered enough for food and stuff that she needed to buy for her children, for example. And then we'd go to work and we'd go to buy a coffee and she'd want us to walk, you know, a kilometer away to buy a coffee at another place. And she said, well, I go here because they give you a free croissant. And I can't tell my husband. I've got to give him the receipt for my coffee. That's how bad it got with her. And that is financial abuse through and through. The other thing is they might reinforce strict gender roles, even if you work. And that was the same for that friend. You know, you have to basically be barefoot pregnant in the kitchen, and you will do all the cooking, cleaning and housework, even if you are working full time, and they will lift, you know, not lift a finger to help you. They like that dominant sort of, they want to be the man of the house, or just, enforce those strict gender roles on you. The eighth thing is that they turn the kids against you. And, you know, in the one breath that they'll say, I love my children, you're not going to have them. If you ever leave me, they're my life. The next minute they'll weaponize them against you, and they will use them to hurt you by saying in front of the kids why you're not a good mother, and that you're neglecting them because you're going to work each day and coming home late, whatever. You know, they will use the kids to hurt you, or they'll say, you know, if you ever leave me, I will make sure that you will never see your kids again. You know, really awful things that they use the children against you, and you fear what they're going to do, so you stay. So it's either they use the kids against you by turning them against you, by telling them why you're a bad mother and turning them against you. Mummy works, you see, she doesn't love you as much as her job, that sort of stuff. Turning the kids against you, or using them as a weapon and threatening, which I'll get onto in a minute. The ninth one is that they control your health and your body. So, for example, they'll monitor what you eat. And I've had women tell me that they used to have to get on the scales every day and be weighed, or they weren't allowed to eat certain foods, or they'd have to exercise so many times a week and then get on the scales, really awful levels of control. And again, they can do this with a smile on their face, saying it's only because I love you and I don't want you to die young. There's many ways of abusing whilst being nice and charming. Or they might have jealous accusations. They might actually be having affairs behind your back, left, right, and center, like my ex did, but be accusing you of having affairs. I was accused of having an affair with the shopkeeper or having sex with the shopkeeper that was literally 20 meters from our apartment, because I took longer than 15 minutes to get back. That's how bad it got for me. And they might get jealous, not just of other men or women. They'll get jealous anytime you spend or attention you give to your family, your friends, or your children. They can get jealous of anyone that is taking you away from giving all your energy to them. Or the 11th one is regulating sex. How much, how often, what you do in bed. They might use sex as a weapon, and you might want it, but they then deny it to you as punishment. Or the other way around, demand it daily or more than you want to, and use that as a weapon. And if you don't, then you're not loving them enough. They might coerce you into letting them shoot videos or photographs of you when you feel really uncomfortable about that, for example. Or they may use it as a weapon by saying they refuse to wear a condom. And as my ex did, and he said, if you really loved me, then you would want my baby. So you wouldn't care if you got pregnant or not. Why do I need to wear one? I mean, it's just so controlling. And the 12th one that really is on my list of coercive control behaviors is, I'm just thinking of it now. Oh yes, threatening children or others, or threatening you, or threatening that they will hurt themselves. So threats. And if physical, emotional, financial threats and control don't work as they want or desire, then they'll turn threats against others or themselves. So my ex said to me, if I can't have you, no one can, which made me very fearful that if I left, he would kill me and my child. In fact, he once even took our baby and ran down the street and said, if I can't have him, no one can. You can't. And I was terrified he was going to kill our child. Or they'll say, I'll kill myself if you leave, making you responsible for their very life. How controlling is that? Or they may threaten to call social services, for example, and tell them you're neglecting your children, and threaten to have them taken away from you if you dare leave them. So as I keep saying, all of this can be done in a covert way. It can be very confusing. It doesn't have to be done in a way that is overtly abusive. And they can do it in a passive aggressive way with a smile on their face, joking, so that it really, really, really does confuse you. And I just want you to go back and listen to this if you need to. And if you are experiencing any of those behaviors on this list, no matter how wonderful and charming they can be, then you are in an abusive relationship and you're not to blame. Emotional abuse can be subtle and it can be confusing. And if you are that frog in that boiling water, by the time you start to recognize it, you've already spent years being abused. And by now your self-esteem is stripped so far from you that you do think, am I imagining this? Is it me? I've had women come to me and saying, you know what, I'm a bit worried that I'm a narcissist. And I said, if you're coming to me worried that you're a narcissist, then you're not a narcissist. You've got enough self-awareness, you know. And coercive control does not have to lead to physical abuse and physical violence. It can be like that way for years. And it's also no different. I don't want you to say, well, my abuse is not that bad because it's not physical. That's minimizing it. It's equally as bad. Abuse is abuse is abuse. And it can lead to physical violence. That's why it's now been deemed a crime in the UK, because so many women who are murdered because they haven't left precisely because they never recognized that those years of this sort of behavior was even abuse at all. That's why the UK deems that they need to step in and protect people who don't recognize it before it's too late. And I'm deeply hoping that the UK, that Australia, my home country, will follow suit. And I know there's a big movement to push, and in the States to push for that. And I hope the rest of the world will follow. You know, I've mentored many women who found the courage to leave, but still feel a lot of guilt and shame that perhaps it was their fault. So if you have left and are still struggling with doubt over this, then honestly, you're not alone. As I said, it is an insidious form of brainwashing that is very difficult to free yourself from without help. Now, as I said, you might have a good job, a nice house, great friends. To the outside world, everything looks great. And that was me. There is no shame in asking for help when you need it. And trust me, if you're experiencing any of this, then you do need help. So let me know in the comments below if you're confused and don't understand whether what you've experienced, or if you've left and still feel that shame and guilt and maybe it was my fault. I hope that's helpful. And I just want to thank you for joining me. Emily Gregson says, thank you for speaking about this. Emotional abuse is worse than physical because it's so subtle. It really is. And Doodlebug says, hello. Thank you for joining me. It really is. It really is. And that's why, and in a way, there's also these stereotypes that people have that, you know, the abuse in the area I grew up in Sydney was a very sort of elite area, and the domestic abuse complaints are absolutely going stratospheric. They're on the rise because it was sort of, in a way, worse there was this snobby aspect to emotional abuse in growing up in an area that's considered, you know, posh and everyone's successful and they've got money and it's It's great, and everyone's keeping up with the Joneses, and there's so much shame, you know, and there's this snobby thing that, oh, it only happens to people that are not like us. And snobbily referring to, you know, people who are on government benefits, or, you know, other people they're the people who suffer abuse. And it is just so not true. Anyone can experience this form of emotional abuse and coercive control. And it is no different, you know, just because you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, it's not less than someone in a physical. It is equal to. Abuse is abuse is abuse, as I said. So there is no shame in asking for help. I've mentored many women out of this belief and freed them from that anxiety, guilt, and shame, to the point where they now realize they deserve so much better than that. And I get them to the point of so much confidence and empowerment that they know exactly the right decision to make in their life. And I would never tell anyone to leave a relationship or stay, but I'm absolutely certain that by the time they finish working with me, they'll be in such a confident place that they will know exactly the right choice to make in their lives, and never settle for anything less than they deserve again. So thanks for joining me. It's Friday here, Friday. So happy weekend, everybody, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.